Hello there, and welcome to Podround, the podcast that reviews podcasts so you don't have to scroll endlessly wondering what to listen to next. If you're new here, this is what we do. Each episode, we take a topic that's dominating the news agenda. Sometimes it's the royal family, sometimes it's the entertainment industry, sometimes it's a public controversy, and we curate a handful of podcasts covering that subject. Then we review them, not to criticize, not to rank them, but to help you discover something brilliant. And today, we're stepping into something enormous, the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Now, this is not just another tournament. This is the first 48-team World Cup in history. It runs from June 11th to July 19th, 2026, and it'll be played across the United States, Mexico, and Canada. 104 matches in 39 days. It's the largest sporting event ever staged in North America, and it's already dominating the conversation. There are political questions, commercial questions, ticketing questions, transport questions, and of course, football questions. Now, one of the biggest UK football podcasts has secured an enormous deal to provide daily World Cup coverage during the tournament. Fair enough, but Podround has always been about discovery. So today, we've selected 3 podcasts that approach this World Cup from 3 completely different angles. One approaches it like investigative journalism, one approaches it like a witty football salon, and one approaches it like a live American soccer rally. 3 different tones, 3 different countries, 3 different listening experiences. So let's start with the most forensic. The Athletic FC with their episode, Are FIFA Exploiting World Cup Fans? There is something reassuring about listening to people who really know their subject. The Athletic FC feels just like that. This is not a podcast that thrives on outrage. It thrives on detail. The show is hosted by Ayo Akinwolere, and he's such an interesting figure in British broadcasting. Many people forget that he started on children's flagship BBC programme Blue Peter, which gives him warmth, that gives him ease in front of a microphone. But since then, he's built serious credibility across BBC Sport, CBS, and Premier League productions. He's calm. He doesn't rush. He asks questions that open doors rather than slam them. And around him sits what I can only describe as a journalistic smorgasbord. Adam Crafton, an investigative reporter known for digging deep into governance stories. Matt Slater, a football business correspondent who understands money flows like some people understand midfield pressing patterns. And Henry Bushnell, a US-based writer who gives this episode a real on-the-ground perspective. The Athletic FC won Sports Podcast of the Year at the 2024 British Podcast Awards, and you can hear why within the first 5 minutes. This episode runs just under an hour, but it feels substantial. They aren't asking whether England should play a back 3 or whether Foden and Palmer will be on the plane. They're asking whether FIFA's ticketing structure is deliberately opaque. They examine the category system that many American fans aren't used to, where you buy a category, not a specific seat. They talk about dynamic pricing and the resale market. They question whether FIFA are holding back prime seats to release later at higher prices. And here's what I love. There's no shouting. There's no, this is a disgrace energy. There is careful dismantling of systems, careful conversation. Matt Slater at one point describes FIFA's language about ticket sales as very Trumpian, and you can hear the subtle eyebrow raise in his voice. It's criticism, but it's composed criticism. The episode then moves seamlessly into transport. New Jersey rail fares, school buses drafted in, whether public transport costs should fall on fans. Then they widen the lens again. Broadcast rights in China and India, where the Caribbean nations will even be able to legally watch the tournament. Visa complexities, diaspora fan communities. This is football treated as geopolitics. It's what happens when sport meets policy. It's not light listening, but it's not heavy either. It's intelligent and it's structured. If you want to understand how a World Cup actually works, not just how it feels, this is where you go. This is your listen. It's a daily show during the season, originating from the UK and US hybrid newsroom that is The Athletic. There's occasional mild language. It's clearly aimed at adults, but it never feels crude. It feels informed. And in one line, The Athletic FC is a journalist-led deep dive that treats the World Cup as both spectacle and system. Now, from investigative calm to conversational chaos. The Guardian Football Weekly, and their episode is the USA ready for the World Cup? If The Athletic feels like a well-prepared briefing document, the Guardian Football Weekly feels like a brilliant pub conversation that just happens to be extremely well informed. This podcast has serious heritage. It began in 2006 during the World Cup. Originally hosted by James Richardson, it evolved into a weekly, then multi-weekly staple. Since 2017, it's been hosted by Max Rushton. Max is fascinating because he bridges worlds. He studied journalism properly. He understands structure. But he also spent 8 years hosting Soccer AM, which means he's completely at ease in chaotic environments. If you know Soccer AM, you know what I'm talking about. Alongside him in this episode are Barry Glendenning, wonderfully sardonic and self-aware, and two US-based writers, Alex Abnos, senior sports editor at The Guardian, and soccer journalist and author Leander Scherleckens. The episode opens with an email from a listener asking why the World Cup buzz feels flat, and immediately you feel part of something communal. They aren't delivering a lecture, they're exploring a mood. They move from ticket prices to ICE enforcement concerns, from diaspora communities in Los Angeles to the US men's national team's tactical prospects, from the famous win over England in the 1950s to the realities of MLS development pathways. There's laughter. There's a moment where they read resale ticket prices live and just pause in disbelief. But what makes this podcast special is that beneath the humor, there's real depth. Leander discusses the structural weaknesses of US youth development. They talk about whether hosting this tournament will leave a legacy the way 1994 did. They debate whether the US Federation will actually benefit financially this time. And it's this balance that Guardian Football Weekly does so well. It allows space for seriousness without becoming somber. There's mild swearing, nothing shocking, but it's clearly adult conversation. The show runs around 45 minutes and is released 3 times a week during the season. It's accessible. You don't need to be an expert to follow it, but you do need to care. And in one line, The Guardian Football Weekly delivers a sharp, funny, and historically rich football conversation that balances politics with pure love of the game. Now we cross the Atlantic properly, and the energy changes entirely. Men in Blazers and their episode, Clint Dempsey answers 6 big US MNT questions. Men in Blazers is less a podcast and more a movement. Founded in 2010 by Roger Bennett and Michael Davis, it has grown into a fully independent, employee-owned American soccer media network. They call their analysis suboptimal. They describe soccer as America's sport of the future since 1972, and they have built a fiercely loyal community called the G-Fops, great friends of the pod. This episode is recorded live in a soccer bar in Virginia. You can hear glasses clinking. You can hear crowd laughter. It feels like an event. Roger Bennett is theatrical, self-aware, occasionally dramatic in the best possible way. And sitting beside him is Clint Dempsey. 3 World Cups, 57 goals for the US men's national team, the first American to score in 3 separate World Cups. Now, here's the thing. This episode isn't structured like The Athletic. It isn't as conversationally balanced as The Guardian Football Weekly. It's emotional. Dempsey talks about dreaming the night before his World Cup start against Italy that he would play badly. He describes waking up and deciding that whatever happened, he would have no regrets. That's not analysis. That's humanity. They discuss Christian Pulisic's goal drought. They talk about Florian Balogun's form. They question where the US Federation is building the right culture ahead of the World Cup. They explore where the ticket prices are alienating fans. But always, it comes back to identity. What does this tournament mean to America? What does it mean to host? What does it mean to carry a nation's hopes? There's swearing. There's adult humor. It's not aimed at children, but it's authentic. And if the 2026 World Cup is going to feel like 104 Super Bowls compressed into 6 weeks, Men in Blazers captures that cultural heartbeat. It runs multiple times a week. It blends football with pop culture. It thrives on community. In one line, Men in Blazers is a passionate, funny, live wire American soccer show that captures the emotional heartbeat of a home World Cup. So, what have we got? 3 podcasts, 3 completely different experiences. If you want investigative clarity, go to The Athletic FC. If you want humour and historical perspective, go to The Guardian Football Weekly. And if you want emotional, cultural immersion, go to Men in Blazers. And that's what Podround is about, curated trust. When the World Cup begins in June 2026, you won't just need fixtures, you'll need context, you'll need voices, you'll need good company. And hopefully, today, we've helped you find 3. If you've got suggestions for future episodes, then let us know in the comments. Like, subscribe, and join us next time on Podround. Because whatever the subject, there's always a podcast worth discovering. See you soon.